Greetings.
Greetings, everybody. Today, we cozy up on the snuggle bench, and we're going to finish reading the, whatever series we had started before. What was it? The Mystery... It starts with Mystery of Talara. Previously, we read volumes 1 and 2. Today, we finish off with volumes 3, 4, and 5. A lot of reading in store for us today, seeing as these are decently long books. But anyway, here we go. The Mystery of Princess Talara, Part 3, still by Mara Lakith. Norbuth was leaving his favorite pub in Camlorn, the Breaking Branch, when he heard someone calling his name. His was not the sort of a name that could be mistaken for another, true. He turned and saw Lord Errol, the royal battle mage from the palace, emerge from the darkness of the alley. "My lord," said Norbuth with a pleasant smile. "I'm surprised to see you out this evening," Norbuth grinned Lord Errol with a most unpleasant smile. "I have not seen you and your master very much since the millennial celebration, but I understand you've been very busy. What I've been wondering is what you've been busy doing." "Protecting the imperial interests in Camlorn is busy work, my lord, but I cannot imagine you would be interested in the mundane." I'm just gonna say mundane. It's not mundane, but it's gotta have the same. I'm pretty sure it's the same. Just a synonym. The mundane of the ambassador's appointments. "But I am," said the battle mage, "especially as the ambassador has begun acting most mysteriously, most undiplomatically lately, and I understand that he has taken one of the whores from the flower festival into his house. I believe her name was Jinna?" Norbuth shrugged. "He's in love, I would imagine, my lord. It can make men act very strangely, as I'm sure you've heard before. She is a most comely thought it was wench. She is a most comely wench. I thought it was woman, not wench. She is a most comely wench," laughed Lord Errol. "Have you noticed how much she resembles the late Princess Talara?" "I have only been in Camlorn for 15 years, my lord. I never saw her late majesty. Now I could understand it if he had taken to writing poetry, but what man in love spends his days in the kitchens of the palace, talking to old servants? That hardly sounds like molten passion to me, even based on my limited experience." Lord Errol rolled his eyes. "And what is this business he has now in... what is the name of that village?" "Umbington," replied Norbuth, and immediately wished he hadn't. Lord Errol was too canny an actor to reveal it, but Norbuth knew at the pit of his stomach that the battle mage did not even know Lord Strayle had left the capital. He had to get away to let the ambassador know, but there was still a game to be carefully played. "He's not leaving for there until tomorrow. I believe it's just to put a stamp on some deed that needs the imperial seal. Is that all? How tedious for the poor fellow. I suppose I'll see him when he returns then." Lord Errol bowed. "Thank you for being so informative. Farewell." The moment the royal battle mage turned his corner, Norbuth leapt onto his horse. He had drunk one or two ales too many, but he knew he must find his way to Umbington before Lord Errol's agents did. He galloped east out of the capital, hoping there were signs along the road. Seated in a tavern that smelled of mildew and sour beer, Lord Strayle marveled at how the Emperor's agent, Lady Brizenna, always found the most public of places for her most private of conferences. It was harvest time in Umbington, and all of the field hands were drinking away their meager wages in the noisiest of fashions. He was dressed appropriately for the venue, rough trousers and a simple peasant's vest, but he still felt suspicious. In comparison to his two female companions, he certainly was. The woman to his right was used to frequenting the low places of Daggerfall as a common prostitute. Lady Brizenna to his left was even more clearly in her element. "But what name would you prefer I call you?" Lady Brizenna asked solicitously. "I'm used to the name Jinna, though that may have to change," was her reply. "Of course, it may not. Jinna the Whore may be the name writ on my grave. I will see to it that there is no attempt on your life like at the flower festival. Lord Strayle frowned. "But without the Emperor's help, I won't be able to protect you forever." The only permanent solution is to capture those who would do you harm, and then to raise you to your proper station. Do you believe my story? Jenna turned to Lady Brezenia. I have been the Emperor's chief agent in High Rock for many years now, and I have heard few stranger tales. If your friend the ambassador hadn't investigated and discovered what he has, I would have dismissed you outright as a madwoman. Brezenia laughed, forcing a smile onto Jenna's face to match. But now, yes, I do believe you. Perhaps that makes me the madwoman. Will you help us? Asked Lord Strail simply. It is a tricky business interfering in the affairs of the provincial kingdoms. Lady Brezenia looked into the depths of her mug thoughtfully. Unless there is a threat to the Empire itself, we find it is best not to meddle. What we have in your case is a very messy assassination that happened 20 years ago, in its aftermath. If His Imperial Majesty involved itself in every bloody hiccup in the succession of each of his 1,000 vassal kingdoms, he would never accomplish anything for the greater good of Tamriel. I understand, murmured Jenna. When I remembered everything, who I was and what happened to me, I resolved to do nothing about it. In fact, I was leaving Camlorn and going back home to Daggerfall when I saw Lord Strail again. He was the one who began this quest to resolve this, not me. And when he brought me back, I only wanted to see my cousin to tell her who I was, but he forbade me. It would have been too dangerous, growled Strail. We still don't know yet the depths of the conspiracy. Perhaps we never will. I'm sorry, I always find myself giving long explanations to short questions. When Lord Strail asked if I would help you, I should have begun by saying yes. Lord Brianna laughed at the change in Lord Strail and Jenna's expressions. I will help you, of course, but for this to turn out well, you must accomplish 2 things to the Emperor's satisfaction. First, you must prove with absolute certainty who is the power behind this plot you've uncovered. You must get someone to confess. And secondly, said Lord Strail, nodding, we must prove that this is a matter worthy of His Imperial Majesty's consideration, and not merely a minor local concern. Lord Strail, Lady Brezenia, and the woman who called herself Jenna discussed how to accomplish their goals for a few hours more. When it was agreed what had to be done, Lady Brezenia took her leave to find her ally Prosicus. Strail and Jenna set off to the west, toward Camlorn. It was not long after beginning their ride through the woods that they heard the sound of galloping hoofbeats far up ahead. Lord Strail unsheathed his sword and signaled for Jenna to position her horse behind him. At that moment, they were attacked on all sides. It was an ambush. 8 men, armed with axes, had been lying in wait. Lord Strail quickly yanked Jenna from her horse, pulling her behind him. He made a brief, deft motion with his hands. A ring of flame materialized around them and rushed outward, striking their assailants. The men roared in pain and dropped to their knees. Lord Strail jumped the horse over the closest one and galloped at full speed westward. I thought you were an ambassador, not a mage, laughed Jenna. I still believe there are times for diplomacy, replied Lord Strail. The horse and rider they had heard before met them on the road. It was Norbuth. My lord, it's the royal battle mage. He found out you 2 were in Umbington. With considerable case. I might add, Lord Errol's voice boomed out to the woods. Norbuth, Jenna, and Lord Strail scanned the dark trees, but they showed nothing. The battle mage's voice seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. I'm sorry, my lord, groaned Norbuth. I tried to warn you as soon as I could. In your next life, perhaps you'll remember not to trust your plans to a drunkard, laughed Lord Earl. He had them in his sights, and the spell was unleashed. Norbuth saw him first, by the light of the ball of fire that leapt from his fingertips. Later, Errol was to wonder to himself what the fool had intended to do. Perhaps he was rushing forward to pull Lord Strail out of the path. Perhaps he was trying to flee the path of destruction, and had simply moved left when he should have moved right. Perhaps, as unlikely as it seemed, he was willing to sacrifice himself to save his master. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. He got in the way. There was an explosion of energy that filled the night, and an echoing boom that shook birds from the trees for a mile around. On the few square feet where Norbuth and his horse had stood was nothing but black grass. They had been reduced to less than vapor. Jinna and Lord Strail were thrown back. Their horse, when it recovered its senses, galloped away as fast as it could. In the lingering, glowing aura of the spell's detonation, Lord Strail looked straight into the woods and into the wide eyes of the battle mage. "Damn," said Lord Errol, and began to run. The ambassador jumped to his feet and pursued. "That was an expensive use of magicka, even for you." I always love the fucking, haha, I caught you, you're out of magicka, as they're sitting there just regenerated. I don't know, that always just feels very strange to me. Said Lord Strail as he ran. "Don't you know well enough not to use ranged spells unless you are certain your target won't be blocked? I never thought that idiot." Lord Errol was struck from behind and knocked to the wet forest floor before he had a chance to finish his lamentation. "It doesn't matter what you thought," said Lord Strail calmly, flipping the battle mage around and pinning his arms to the ground with his knees. "I'm not a battle mage, but I knew enough not to use my entire reserve on your little ambush. Gotta make it a skill book after all, huh? Perhaps it's a matter of philosophy. As a government agent, I feel inclined toward conservatism." Fucking Republicans, huh? "What are you going to do?" whimpered Lord Errol. "Norbuth was a good man, one of the best, and so I'm going to hurt you quite a lot." The ambassador made a slight movement, and his hands began to glow brightly. "That's a certainty. How much more I'm going to hurt you after that depends on what you tell me. I want to hear about the former Duke of Looney." "What do you want to know?" Lord Errol screamed. "Let's start with everything," replied Lord Strail with perfect patience. And that was volume 3. And on to volume 4 we go. Another 24 pages here. The Mystery of Princess Talara, part 4. Jinna never saw the Emperor's agent, Lady Brezenia, again, but she kept her promise. Prosicus, a knight blade in the service of the Empire, arrived at Lord Strail's house in disguise. She was an apt pupil, and within days he had taught what she needed to know. It is a simple charm, not the sort of spell that could turn a raging Daedroth into a love-struck puppy, said Prosicus. If you do or say anything that would normally anger or offend your target, the power will weaken. It will alter temporarily his perception of you, as spells of his school of illusion do, but his feelings of respect and admiration for you must be supported by means of a charm of a less magical nature. I understand, smiled Jinna, thanking her tutor for the 2 spells of illusion he had taught her. The time had come to use her newfound skill. I'm assuming this is an illusion skill book. The Prostitutes' Guild House of Camlorn was a great palace in an affluent northern quarter of the city. Prince Cylon could have found his way there blindfolded, or blind drunk as he often was. Tonight, however, he was only lightly inebriated, and he resolved to drink no more. Tonight, he was in the mood for pleasure, his kind of pleasure. "Where is my favorite Grigia?" he demanded of the guild mistress upon entering. "She is still healing from your appointments with her last week," she smiled serenely. "Most of the other women are in with clients as well, but I saved a special treat for you, a new girl, one you will certainly enjoy." The prince was guided to a sumptuously decorated suite of velvet and silk. As he entered, Jinna stepped from behind a screen and cast her spell quickly. With her mind open to belief as Prosicus had instructed, it was hard to tell if it worked at first. The prince looked at her with a cruel smile, and then, like sun breaking through clouds, the cruelty left. She could tell he was hers. He asked her name. "I am between names right now," she teased. "I've never made love to a real prince before. I've never even been inside a palace. Is yours very big?" "It's not mine yet," he shrugged, "but someday I'll be king." Wait, what? Are we talking about the same thing here? I've never made love to a real prince. I've never even been inside a palace. Is yours? Oh, okay, yeah, we're talking about the palace. I don't think they're talking about the same thing. He thinks it's talking about the palace. I guess she's, I don't really know what she's going with. But, I mean, come on, is yours very ... big? I mean, come on. It's not mine yet, he shrugged. I was like, what do you mean? Like, is your dick not yours? Are you stealing a dick from... Okay, the palace. He shrugged. "But someday I'll be king. It would be wonderful to live in such a place. Jinnah cooed. 1,000 years of history. Everything must be so old and beautiful. The paintings and books and statues and tapestries. Does your family hold onto all their old treasures? Yes, hoarded away with a lot of boring old junk in the archive rooms and the vaults. Please, may I see you naked now? I feel like he's asking just so cordially. Please, can I see you naked now? Like, what are we doing here? First, a little conversation, though you may feel free to disrobe whenever you like, said Jinnah. I had heard there was an archive room, but it's quite hidden away. There's a false wall behind the family crypt, said the prince, gripping her wrist and pulling her towards him for a kiss. Something in his eyes had changed. Your Highness, you're hurting my arm, Jinnah cried. Enough talk. You bewitched whore, he snarled, holding back a sharp jab of fear. Jinnah let her mind cool and perceptions whirl. As his angry mouth touched her lips, she cast the second spell she had learned from her illusionist mentor. The prince felt his flesh turn to stone. He remained frozen, watching Jinnah pull together her clothing and leave the room. The paralysis... Is that really illusion? Yeah, I suppose so. The paralysis would only last a few more minutes. Minutes? That's a long fucking spell, goddamn. That's a lot of fucking magic for a few minutes. Well, I suppose Oblivion minutes and real-life minutes are very different. Alright, fair enough. But it was all the time she needed. The guild mistress had already left with all her girls, just as Jinnah and Strael had told her to. They would tell her when it was safe to return. She had not even accepted any gold for her part in the trap. She said it was enough that her girls would not be tortured anymore by that most perverse and cruel prince. What a terrible boy, thought Jinnah as she raised the hood on her cloak and raced through the streets toward Lord Strael's house. It is good that he will never be king. The following morning, the king and queen of Camlorn held their daily audience with various nobles and diplomats, a sparse gathering. The throne room was largely empty. It was a terribly dull way to begin the day. In between petitions, they yawned regally. What has happened to all the interesting people? The queen murmured. Where's our precious boy? I've heard he was raging through the north quarter in search of some harlot who robbed him. The king chuckled fondly. What a fine lad. And what of the royal battle mage? I've sent him to take care of a delicate matter, the king knit his brow, but that was nearly a week ago, and I haven't heard one word from him. It's somewhat troubling. Indeed it is, Lord Errol should not be gone so long, the queen frowned. What if a rogue sorcerer came and threatened us? Husband, don't laugh at me. That is why all the royal houses of High Rock keep their mage retainers close to their side, to protect their courts from evil enchantments, like the one that our poor emperor suffered so recently, at the hand of his own battle mage. Lord Errol would never betray you like that, and you well know it. He had been in your employ since you were Duke of Aloyni. To even make that comparison between he and Yeagar Tharn, really, the queen waved her hands dismissively. It is that sort of lack of trust that is ruining kingdoms all over Tamriel. Now, Lord Strael tells me there's another man that's gone missing, mused the king. The ambassador? The queen shook her head. No, he's here. He was desirous to visit the crypts and pay homage to your noble ancestors, so I directed him there. I can't think what's keeping him so long. He must be more pious than I thought. She was surprised to see the king rise up, alarmed. Why didn't you tell me? Before she had a chance to reply, the subject of their conversation was coming through the open door to the throne room. At one of his arms was a beautiful fair-haired woman in a stately gown of scarlet and gold, worthy of the highest nobility. The queen followed her startled husband's gaze and was likewise amazed. I had heard he was taken with one of the harlots from the flower festival, not a lady, she whispered. Why, she looks remarkably like your daughter, the Lady Julia. That she does, the king gasped. Or her cousin, the Princess Talara. The nobles in the room also whispered amongst themselves, though few had been at court 20 years ago when the princess had disappeared, presumed murdered like the rest of the royal family. There were still a few elder statesmen who remembered. It was not only on throne that the word Talara passed through the air like an enchantment. Lord Strael, will you introduce us to your lady? The queen asked with a polite smile. In a moment, your highness, But I'm afraid I must first discuss pressing matters, Lord Strail replied with a bow. Might I request a private audience? The king looked at the imperial ambassador, trying to read into the man's expression. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the assembled and had the doors shut behind them. No one remained in the audience room but the king, the queen, the ambassador, a dozen royal guards, and the mysterious woman. The ambassador pulled from his pocket a sheaf of old yellowed, okay. I was like, yellowed parchment. Your Highness, when you ascended the throne after your brother and his family were murdered, anything that seemed important, deeds and wills, were of course kept with the clerks and ministers. His entire incidental, unimportant personal correspondence was sent to archive, which is standard protocol. This letter was among them. What is this all about, sir? The king boomed. What does it say? Nothing about you, your majesty. In truth, at the time of your majesty's ascension, no one reading it could have understood its significance. It was a letter to the emperor the late king your brother was penning at the time of his assassination, concerning a thief who had once been a mage priest at the temple of Sethate, here in Camlorn. His name was Yeagar Tharn. Yeagar Tharn, the queen laughed nervously. Why, we were just talking about him. Tharn had stolen many books of powerful and forgotten spells, and lore about such artifacts as the Staff of Chaos, where it was hidden and how it could be used. News traveled slowly to westernmost High Rock, and by the time the king, your brother, had heard that the Emperor's new battle mage was a man named Yeagar Tharn, many years had passed. The king had been writing a letter to warn the Emperor of the treachery of his imperial battle mage, but it was never completed. Lord Strail held up the letter. It is dated on the day of his assassination in the year 385, 4 years before Yeagar Tharn betrayed his master and began the 10 years of tyranny of the imperial simulacrum. This is all very interesting, the king barked, but what has it to do with me? The late king's assassination is now a matter of imperial concern, and I have a confession from your royal battle mage, Lord Errol. The king's face lost all color. You miserable worm, no man may threaten me. Neither you, nor that whore, nor that letter will ever see the light of day again. Guards! The royal guards unsheathed their blades and pressed forward. As they did so, there was a sudden shimmering of light, and the room was filled with imperial night blades, led by Prosicus. They had been there for hours, lurking invisibly in the shadows. That is highly impressive to just keep on casting those invisibility spells over and over again without a single person getting caught. That is, pretty good. In the name of His Imperial Majesty Uriel Septim VII, I arrest you, said Strail. The doors were opened, and the king and queen were led out, heads bowed. Jinna told Prosicus where he would most likely find their son, Prince Silorn. The courtiers and nobles who had been in the audience chamber stared at the strange, solemn procession of their king and queen to their own royal prison. No one said a word. When at last a voice was heard, it startled all. The Lady Gilia had arrived at court. What is happening? Who dares to usurp the authority of the king and queen? Lord Strail turned to Prosicus. We would speak with the Lady Gilia alone. You know what needs to be done. Prosicus nodded and had the doors to the throne room closed once again. The courtiers pressed against the wood, straining to hear everything. Though they could not say it, they wanted an explanation almost as much as her ladyship did. And with that, we read into the last chapter. Ooh, this one's only 19 pages. Wow, that's pretty nice. All right. The Mystery of Princess Talara, Part 5. The final part. By what right do you arrest my father? Cried the Lady Gilia. What has he done? I arrest the King of Camlorn, the former Duke of Eloini, by the right as an imperial commanding officer and ambassador, said Lord Strail, by the right of law of the Emperor of Tamriel, which supersedes all provincial royal authority. Just goddamn say what he's charged with. Jenna came forward and tried to put her hand on Gilia's arm, but she was coldly rebuffed. Quietly, she sat down at the foot of the throne in the now empty audience chamber. This young lady came to me, having completely recovered her memory, but the story she told was beyond incredible. I simply couldn't believe it, said Lord Strail, but she was so convinced of it, I had to investigate. I feel like she's actually... Did she actually get her memory back? Like, what? Like, how would she have just gotten her memory back? Did she just make up a whole fucking story to, like, convince everybody that she was that person? So as we'll find out. So I talked to everyone who was here at the palace 20 years ago to see if there could be any truth to it. Of course, at the time of the king and queen's murder and the princess's disappearance, there was a full inquiry made, but I had different questions to ask this time. Questions about the relationship between the two little cousins, Lady Julia Reyes and the princess. I've told everyone over and over again, I don't remember anything at all about that time in my life, said Julia, tears welling up. I know you don't. There has never been a question in my mind that you witnessed a horrible murder, and that your memory lapse and hers, said Lord Strail, gesturing toward Jenna, are both very real. The story I heard from the servants and other people at the palace was that the little girls were inseparably close. There were no other playmates, and as the princess's place was to be close to her parents, so the little Lady Julia was always there as well. When the assassin came to murder the royal family, the king and queen were in their bedroom, and the girls were playing in the throne room. When my memory came back to me, it was like opening a sealed box, said Jenna solemnly. Everything was so clear and detailed, like it all happened yesterday, not 20 years ago. I was on the throne, playing Empress, and you were hiding behind the dais, pretending you were in a dungeon I had sent you to. A man I had never seen burst into the room from the royal bedchamber, his blade soaked in blood. He came at me, and I ran for my life. I remember starting to run for the dais, but I saw your face, frozen and fair, and I didn't want to lead him to you, so I ran for the window. We had climbed on the outside of the castle before, just for fun. That was one of the first memories that came back to me when I was holding onto that cliff. You and I on the castle wall, and the king calling up to me, telling me how to get down. But that day, I couldn't hold on. I was trembling so much I just fell and landed in the river. I don't know if it was entirely the horror of what I had seen, or that combined with the impact of the fall and the coldness of the water, but everything just went blank in my mind. When I finally pulled myself out of the river, many miles away, I had no idea who I was, and so it stayed, Jenna smiled, until now. So you are the Princess Talara, cried Julia. Let me explain further before she answers that, because the simple answer would just confuse you, as it did me. Odd, okay, said Lord Strail. The assassin was caught before he managed to escape the palace. In truth, he had to know he was going to be caught. He confessed immediately to the murders of the royal family. The princess, he said, he had thrown out the window to her death. A servant down below heard the scream and saw something fly past his window, so he knew it to be true. It was not for several hours that little Lady Julia was found by her nursemaid Ramkay, hiding behind the dais, coated with dust, shivering with fear, and unable to speak at all. Ramkay was very protective of you, Strail said, nodding to Julia. She insisted on putting you to your room right away, and sent word the Duke of Eloigny that the royal family was dead, and that his daughter had witnessed the murders but survived. I'm beginning to remember a little of that, said Julia wonderingly. I remember lying in bed with Ramkay comforting me. I was so muddled and I couldn't concentrate. I remember I just wanted it to be playtime still. I don't know why. And then I remember being bundled up and taken to that asylum. It'll all come back to you soon, Gina smiled. I promise. That's how I began to remember. I just caught one detail and the whole flood began. That's it, Julia began to sob in frustration. I don't remember anything else except confusion. No, I also remember Daddy not even looking at me as I was taken away, and I remember not caring about that or anything else. It was a confusing time for all, so particularly so for the little girls, especially little girls who went through what you two did, said Lord Strail sympathetically. From what I understood, as soon as he received the message from Ramkay, the Duke left his palace at Eloigny, gave orders for you to be sent to a private sanitarium until you'd recovered from your ordeal, and set to work with his private guard torturing the assassin for information. When I heard that no one but the Duke and his personal guard saw the assassin after he gave his initial confession, and that no one was present but the Duke and his guards when the assassin was killed trying to escape, I thought that very significant. I spoke with Lady Errol, who I knew was one of those present, and I had to bluff him, pretending I had more evidence than I did. I got the reaction I was hoping for, though it was a dangerous gambit. At last he confessed to what I already knew to be true. The assassin, Lord Strail paused and reluctantly met Julia's eyes, had been hired by the Duke of Eloigny to kill the royal family, including the princess as heir, so that the crown might be passed to him and to his children. Julia stared at Lord Strail, aghast. My father! The assassin had been told that once the Duke had him in custody, he would be paid, and a prison break would be arranged. The thug picked the wrong time to be greedy and tried to get more gold. The Duke decided that it would be cheap to silence him, so he murdered him then and there, so the man would never tell anyone what really happened. Lord Strail shrugged. No tragic loss as far as murders go. In a few years' time, he returned from the sanitarium, a little shaken, but back to normal, except for a complete absence of memory about your childhood. And in that time, the former Duke of Eloigny had taken his brother's place as the King of Camlorn. It was no small maneuver. No, said Julia quietly. He must have been very busy. He remarried and had another child. No one ever came to visit me in the sanitarium but Ramkay. If he had visited and seen you, said Gina, the story might have turned out very differently. What do you mean? Asked Julia. This is the most amazing part, said Lord Strail. The question has long been whether Gina is the Princess Talara. Nope, they switched. That's my guess. I don't know. We'll find out in probably half a page or so. When her memory returned, and she told me what she remembered, I put several pieces of evidence together. Consider these facts. The two of you look remarkably alike now after 20 years of living very different lives, and as little girls and constant playmates, you looked nearly identical. At the time of the assassination, the murderer, who had never been there before, only saw one girl on the throne, who he assumed to be his quarry. The woman who found Lady Julia was her nursemaid Ramkay, a creature of unstable mind and fanatical devotion to her charge. The type would never accept the possibility that her beloved little girl had been the one who disappeared. The nursemaid was the only single person who knew both Princess Talara and the Lady Julia who visited you while you were in the sanitarium. Finally, said Lord Strail, consider the fact that when you returned to court from the sanitarium, 5 years had passed, and you had grown from a child to a young lady. You looked familiar, but not quite the same as your family remembered you, which is only natural. I don't understand, cried the poor girl. I mean, come on, put the clues together, woman. I don't understand, cried the poor girl, her eyes wide, because she did understand. Oh, okay. Her memory was falling together like a terrible flood. Let me explain it like this, said her cousin, wrapping her in her arms. I know who I am now. My real name is Julia Reyes. That man who was arrested was my father, the man who murdered the king, your father. You are the Princess Talara. Da da da. Good old-fashioned Oblivion book switcheroo at the end. Wow. I probably should have seen that from the first book, but for some reason I only actually caught on to that probably near the start of that book. I didn't mention it right away, but yeah. And that is the story of the Princess of Talara. The Princess Talara. So, yeah, so she already kind of thought that she was going to be, like, the next in line. Well, I guess she wasn't because, like, the brother. But she kind of thought that she was, like, second in line. And then, lo and behold, she finds out, hey, you're actually first in line, and you're also just, pretty much completely different person, which is probably a big, definitely really strange to try and process that. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed our reading. We have a lot more reading to come up, unfortunately. Fortunately and unfortunately, depending on your perspective on books. But anyway, in the next video, we're going to do another quest. I'm thinking we might go to Vythorn in the next quest. Maybe. I don't know. We might. Yeah, probably. I'm thinking go to Vythorn so that we can kind of knock off, some more of these locations down in the truly Dementia side of Dementia. I feel like everything between these two roads isn't really Dementia or Mania. I consider that all to be split, even though it's not. I feel like the dividing line is probably just like this right here. Right, like with these pools. Maybe somewhere around over here. I don't really know. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video. Till then,
through my octavo?
Till then, I'm gonna be leafing through Santiago's Octavo.
I've heard it's skinned half.
No, they don't. All right, goodbye. Take care.
I don't wanna see the glow without you. Refuse to even leave my home without you. Or my brain's gonna explode without you. I don't even know how to cope without you. Cause I don't wanna see the glow without you. Refuse to even leave my home without you. Or my brain's gonna explode without you. I don't even know how to cope